Jeannie Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today joining us in the studio we have Tim McDonald. He's a candidate for the circuit judge position in Benton County. Really excited to hear about his experience and why he decided to jump in this race. Tim, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jeannie.
This is the first time that we've had you on Conduit, and as we were saying off camera, really you're the first judicial candidate that we've had come in to talk about the upcoming race on March 3rd. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience.
Sure. So, as I said, my name is Tim McDonald. I've been working as an attorney since I graduated law school in 2007. When I first got out of law school, I started as a special assistant U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia, where I worked as a prosecutor primarily on drug crimes, tracking down heroin and PCP dealers.
Wow.
And then after I spent some time there, I went back to St. Louis, where I had family in the area, and worked there prosecuting gang-related homicides for a significant amount of time. I spent a lot of time trying a lot of cases. While I was doing all of that work, my wife and I found out that she was having our second child, and so we decided we needed to be closer to family.
Yeah.
So we came down to Arkansas to kind of take a step back from the work that I was doing and raise our children. And I started at the Benton County Prosecutor's office here. I was expecting it to be a lighter experience than I had before doing gang-related homicides. But after I'd been in the prosecutor's office here for just a few months, really, Josh Robinson, the prosecutor at the time, came to me and asked me if I would handle the crimes against children caseload. So I started doing that and really kind of changed that position in the prosecutor's office to one where they had somebody focusing on just crimes against children and working with the Children's Advocacy Center.
Yeah, wow, that's I know that's very difficult but important work, that what you're talking about. Are you originally from Arkansas?
No, so my family, we grew up in Missouri.
Okay.
We grew up in southeast Missouri. I've got my mom and dad, two brothers, and we all have now relocated here for one reason or another.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so important to be close to family. And so you have had a lot of experience. You mentioned serving as prosecutor, and now you have a private practice. So why did you decide to run for circuit judge?
So I actually, the fact that I'm in private litigation right now, commercial litigation, I do mostly civil litigation defense work, is because of the opportunity that I saw within Benton County. So Benton County, because of the growth in people there, has now added a new circuit judge position, Division 8, which is the one I'm running for. And it was added specifically to address the increase in criminal cases. And whenever I was working as a prosecutor, I knew no matter how good I did my job, and no matter how strong the evidence was in a case, it always depended upon having good judges and judges that were willing to hold people accountable in order for us to get justice for victims. When they announced that they were adding a new criminal judge position, I knew what my background was, and I thought that I would be someone who could serve the county in that way as a judge. So I left the prosecutor's office a year and a half ahead of time, because you can't go from being a prosecutor to being a judge overnight.
Okay.
If I were still at the prosecutor's office, I would be disqualified from all the criminal cases that are going to be sent to Division 8 in 2027.
That's interesting. So you mentioned whenever you came to Benton County, you didn't really think you would see what you did in your past positions. What is it that you see? Of course, we see tremendous growth in Benton County as well as Washington County, but what is the landscape like there in Benton County?
Yeah, overall, Benton County is a very safe place, especially if you look at it compared to some of the other places that I've prosecuted crime in. What was really different for me is I never handled a crimes against children case. I always thought that the hardest cases to try would be murders, and so that was what I had focused my career on. Whenever I started handling those crimes against children cases, I realized that not only are they much harder to try for a prosecutor than a homicide, say, but also that the prevalence of crimes against children, even in a place like Benton County, is much higher than anyone really realizes unless you're in that world.
I think that Brent Toomey.
Yes.
He has that nonprofit and is so passionate, does tremendous work in this area. And he spoke at a Republican meeting once and just talked about similarly what you're saying, and just the need for resources and additional staff and police officers and, bed space in jails and prisons. What type of, and I know this, you're running for a judge position, but what needs do you see here in Benton County and in Northwest Arkansas as a whole to really, the stories that he would talk about were just gut-wrenching. And I don't know how anyone can work in this space because it's just, crimes against kids seem, but like what needs do you see here in Benton County and what would you like to see changed?
Yeah, so there are a lot of needs, a lot of resources that could be used. So I'd say the first thing is what we would need most in order to pursue more of these cases would be more investigators. So you need more people on the front lines that are following up on allegations and putting the work in on the front end. And then you also need people in the prosecutor's office. You need enough people to handle that caseload to bring those cases forward. There's also still kind of a disconnect between the different agencies. Specifically in Arkansas, there's two ways that a crime involving a child can be handled. One is through law enforcement agencies. The other one is through DCFS, the Division of Children and Family Services. And there's not always great communication between those agencies. And specifically when it comes to DCFS, they have sort of a piecemeal approach to investigating allegations of child abuse. They do it by a referral, not by an individual. So if a case gets referred, they can look at that one single incident and decide nothing bad happened here and move on, while that person may have done many other things and hurt other people, but they don't have all the information there. So some sort of way to really bring all those different pieces together would be great. The other thing I would say, the Children and Family Advocacy Center in Benton County and these Children's Safety Center here in Washington County they're the front lines when it comes to protecting kids and for investigating those cases. So providing them with the resources that they need to do the job that they do is incredibly important.
Why did you choose the law? And also, I know that you have a military background, so mention that as well. But what made you decide to go into law?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for me because I was graduating from college in 2004. And at that time, well, first, I was really good at reading and not good at math, so I didn't really have a chance to be a doctor. Yeah. But I was really interested. So my mom's a nurse. My mom had been a nurse my whole life growing up. She actually went to work at a hospital at St. Louis University Hospital so that me and my brothers could go to college. So I was the first person in my family to go to college because my mom had worked at the hospital, giving us the benefit to go to St. Louis University for college. And during that time, I became really interested in beginning and end of life issues. I saw things like abortion and euthanasia being hot topics. And I was in sort of a standout because I was a pro-life, pro-death penalty student at a Jesuit university.
Wow.
And so that wasn't a very common stance. And what I saw happening at the time is those big questions that I considered really important moral and spiritual questions were being answered in the courts. And so for me, it made sense that if I wanted to learn more about that and pursue what I thought was the right thing in those areas, I needed to go to law school.
Yeah. And then mention your military background as well.
Yeah. So whenever I first graduated law school, I worked both as a special assistant U.S. attorney, and then I also worked at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And working every day with veterans kind of instilled in me this desire to serve more and do more. And so I was actually pretty old for most of the candidates going in, but at 32, I went to the JAG Corps version of Officer Candidate School and became a judge advocate, first in the Missouri Army National Guard, and then I moved to the Army Reserves whenever my family moved here to Arkansas.
You mentioned a few minutes ago the importance of the judges when trying these cases, and I think we're kind of seeing that as far as that landscape nationally when certain issues are sent to on the federal level and mainly on the federal level. What is the remedy for that? And what is your response, when you see some of these rulings come down that you might disagree with? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I do think that it's very important for people to realize that judges, whether they're elected in state court or whether they're appointed federally, have tremendous power over how our law is developed and enforced. So the way that we get to where we're at today, where Dobbs overturns Roe v. Wade, is because of years and years of planning to put conservative justices on the bench. That same thought, I think, should go into how we elect our circuit court judges at this level, because even though all judges are going to be bound by the law of the precedent that's in front of them, there's still a great deal of discretion when it comes to individual cases. And so for Benton County, for example, right now you have 7 circuit judges in Benton County. Because of the Division 8, which I'm running for, there's going to be 8 circuit judges there. The average experience of the judges there now is 20 years per judge. Because 3 are retiring and they're adding a new one. As of January 1st, 2027, the average experience is going to be 6 years per each judge. So there's going to be a huge turnover. And those 8 judges then will, for a very long time, control sort of the policy, if you will, how judges interact in Benton County. And so when it comes to what you can do about that, or what you should do, first, if I am elected judge, as a judge, I'm bound to follow the law as it's been interpreted by the Arkansas Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals in Arkansas. As a citizen, what you can do if you see judges that are being what we consider activist judges, they're going out of their way to put their own personal views into the law, you can vote them out. That would be the way that we could handle that here at state court level.
I didn't plan on asking you this, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on the at the University of Arkansas Law School, how the board rescinded the invite to the dean, and I can't think of what her name is right now. You may, yes, Suski, something like that. What are your thoughts on that? And because you're seeing these different, that's protection of First Amendment that shouldn't happen. You're seeing, people say, well, the legislature and the current administration is throwing weight around. Like, how do you think that should be handled?
Yeah, I think it's a very timely question. So if we look at what happened, so the presumptive dean gets offered the position, and then you find out that she's taken a stance that is really contrary to Arkansas law at this point, right? Her position wasn't in the Arkansas case, it was in a West Virginia statute, but we have a similar statute in Arkansas that prohibits biological males from competing in female athletics. That is the law in the state of Arkansas as it exists today. And she took a position contrary to that. Now, I think that while she does have First Amendment rights, she does not have a right to say or do whatever she wants while holding a government position in the state of Arkansas. So while I personally believe that it's important to encourage discussion at a law school, I mean, that's what law schools do, is they debate all day long, right? Students that are there. If you want to be the person that's in charge of a state-funded institution, then you have to abide by the rules of that state. And I think that there's plenty of ability for discourse within the law school without having a dean who is opposed to the laws of the state.
Yeah, I think a lot of our viewers would agree with that. Since you've been in private practice, talk about the types of cases that you have tried. What percentage, is one thing or another? What do you mainly work on now?
Sure. So I've actually, when it comes to trying cases, most people may or may not realize this, but civil attorneys, that's what I do now, civil litigation. You try very few cases. I actually work in a group that only tries cases, and we don't try very many cases. Right. So as a prosecutor, I at one point would try 10 to 12 cases a year.
Okay.
As a civil litigator now, I'm lucky if we try one case a year. And the cases that I'm primarily trying now are medical malpractice defense cases.
Interesting. Is it just because more likely to settle, or what is it?
So it's about money, right? So in a criminal case, both sides are funded by the state, right? The public defender or the prosecutor, you're being paid with taxpayer salaries. When you come into the civil world, it's everybody's paying their own way through it in some manner or another. And there's a lot of uncertainty in that. So the outcome in a civil case is never guaranteed. So both parties have run a huge risk of losing a lot of money if it doesn't go their way. And business likes certainty.
Yeah, I can understand that. Another topic that I want to ask you about, and I didn't really plan on it, was, remember last year, all of the dust up with the Arkansas Supreme Court justices and Justin Baker? What are your thoughts on that? They were, the Supreme Court, they were in the headlines for several months, really.
They were. I wouldn't want to comment on any specific part of it, because if I win the election, that's in some ways maybe my boss.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that it's a distraction from the work that they should be doing, regardless of how you get there. We depend as litigators, as attorneys, and also as citizens in the state of Arkansas, in the same type of certainty that you would expect out of an institution like the Arkansas Supreme Court. And so it's important that people maintain respect for that institution, and that you can be, have some sort of certainty in how they're going to conduct themselves.
What's been your most memorable case thus far, whether as prosecutor or now?
Most of the cases that are the most memorable are not good cases that, when you try cases involving crimes against children, most of them are very sad. But I will say that there's, in most circumstances, a good outcome, and that is that someone is held accountable for hurting a child, and that you're providing justice to those victims. So the one that I would say stands out the most to me is actually it wasn't the most heinous in terms of the cases I've dealt with, but it was a man named Fred Kimball, who was a citizen of Avoca, Arkansas, and his granddaughters, when they were in their 30s, one of them came forward very publicly and said, "I need to tell the world what happened to me." And as a result of that, her sisters then came forward and also said the same thing. So 30 years after he had sexually assaulted his granddaughters, they came forward, reported what had happened. We worked with law enforcement, and they were able to go forward, take the stand in front of a jury in Benton County and tell about what had happened to them. And the jury came back, and despite the fact that Mr. Kimball was in his 80s at the time, they gave him 2 life sentences for what he had done.
Wow. Yeah, that's tough. What?
And the reason why that case stands out to me so much is because those women were able to afterwards really convey how much appreciation they had for law enforcement and for the work that we had done on the case. And, when you're dealing with younger children, a 6 or 7-year-old, obviously, what you're doing is for them, but they may not understand a lot of what's going on. But those women certainly knew they were the heroes in that case, but they knew that they had a lot of assistance from us.
Yeah. Looking at, let's say, the United States Supreme Court justices, do you have a favorite?
I do.
Who would that be?
Thomas is my favorite.
Okay.
And for a lot of reasons, but mostly because he's always stood by what his judicial philosophy was. A lot of people have come to the Supreme Court with different views, and sometimes they stick to their guns on one thing and not on another issue. But Justice Thomas has been from day one an originalist and has always espoused that view. And it's been clear in every ruling he's made from the time he got on the bench.
Explain to our viewers what really sets you apart in this race and why you would be the best person for this position.
Sure. So the position I'm running for, Division 8, is anticipated to be approximately 90% criminal cases and 10% civil. If you look at my experience as a trial attorney, as an attorney, that's almost exactly what my background is. I've got roughly 12 years as a prosecutor and then the past 2 years as a civil litigator. So I know those worlds very well. When it comes to prosecution, which is criminal law, it's all criminal law. I've been a prosecutor in multiple jurisdictions, state and federal, and I've tried cases now in multiple counties within Arkansas. So I've been in front of a lot of different judges trying cases. I've seen what works. I've seen what doesn't work so well. And so I've got a pretty good sense of what it takes to do those things. But what I would say specifically with criminal cases is you have to have experience working with law enforcement and criminal law as a prosecutor to be able to really understand how those cases, both how the investigation is conducted, but then the legalities of when a prosecution is brought. And it takes the kind of experience that comes with seeing literally thousands of criminal cases to know what the right action should be for a judge in those situations.
Early voting begins in just a few weeks.
February 7th.
So soon. And then Election Day is March 3rd. How can people in Benton County contact you, get involved with your race? And then also just, we mainly deal with legislative races and we talk about kind of the lines. Is it just strictly Benton County only for you?
That's right. So the judicial elections in Benton County for circuit judge are all of the Benton County. So there's going to be 3 contested positions there.
Okay. And then to get involved with your campaign or donate or learn more, what do they need to know?
So TimMcDonaldForJudge.com. And then also I have a Facebook page, Tim McDonald for Judge. There's a phone number. It's my personal cell phone numbers on there, as well as an email address. If anybody wants to reach out to me, they can get in touch with me that way.
All right. Well, anything else you want to add that we haven't covered that you would want our viewers to know?
Yeah. The one thing I would say, just sort of end on, is that going back to why I'm doing this, at the end of the day, really why I'm running is because I moved to Benton County with my family to be closer to our family, but also to raise my family here. And at the end of the day, my goal is to keep Benton County safe for my wife and my children so that we can raise our families here. That's incredibly important to me. My wife, Shayla, and I have been married for 10 years now. We have 3 boys, Ben, Noah, and Gabe, who are 8, 6, and 5. And our house is always rowdy and fun. But I like being in a place where I can let my kids go outside and play and feel safe that they're there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tim, for coming in. Appreciate your insight and your service, and good luck with this race.
Thank you.